Thank you, Sean. Hi, welcome. Come on in, everyone. You're just in time. Perfect timing. I am Isaac Castillo, and I lead the Data Outcome Measurement, Evaluation, Mapping, and GIS team at Kaboom. We are a national nonprofit that is focused on building playgrounds throughout the United States. And this talk is not an OpenStreetMap talk. It's not even a GIS talk. It's a talk about something that most of you were probably experts in at some point in your life, but probably don't think about very much anymore: playgrounds. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what playgrounds are, what the current literature and research says about them, and the big challenge, which is where the heck are playgrounds in the United States, and how do we use that information at Kaboom to help improve the lives of kids? So I'm going to start by telling a little bit of background on what we know about playgrounds. This is based on our own experience at Kaboom and about 30 years worth of research. And there are 4 big points I like to talk about with people around Kaboom, about playgrounds. The first is that where you live matters a lot in terms of how many playgrounds you have access to. And as you can probably imagine, based on the history of the United States, white, wealthy neighborhoods tend to have more playgrounds and to have playgrounds that are closer to where people live than communities of color or communities that are lower income, okay? Also, unsurprisingly, the quality of those playgrounds differs by the community and the neighborhood where they're located in. White, wealthy neighborhoods tend to have the resources and the capacity and the infrastructure to maintain those playgrounds. They are better quality. They have different components. There's no holes or anything broken in any of the play infrastructure. Conversely, if you're in a community of color or a lower income community, generally you have poorer quality playgrounds when you do have playgrounds at all. Third, again, makes total sense, the neighborhood infrastructure matters for this. White, wealthy neighborhoods, better sidewalks, better lighting, shade, bathrooms, benches, way, way higher frequency than if you are in a community color or in a low-income neighborhood. And finally, the history of all of this stuff matters, right? So it's not that long ago in the United States. None of you are old enough to have experienced this, but I bet you your parents and certainly your grandparents experienced desegregation and what happened in American communities and parks and recreation facilities at that time in the 60s and even the 70s, where you had playgrounds that were literally taken out of the ground to prevent white and children of color from playing together. Swimming pools were filled with concrete so that white kids couldn't swim with children who were African American or Latino. It was not that long ago. And a lot of those laws are legacy laws that still exist today, which direct people where you can and can't build playgrounds and play infrastructure. Right? I know you're like shocked, right? But it like exists today. So all of this kind of feeds into the history of what Kaboom does and our work. And critically, what we're trying to do is address this concept of play space inequity. And what we mean by play space inequity is that every child in the United States should have access to a high-quality play space. And there are large communities and large areas of the United States that do not have access to a high-quality play space. They probably don't have a playground, or if they do have a playground, it is super low quality and it's not maintained. Okay, make sense? So as Kaboom, we're trying to address this concept of play space inequity. So to do that, we need to know, oh good, come on in, come on. Look, we have an actual playground expert coming into the room right now, right? Because children are playground experts, not adults, right? So for us to figure out where we build new playgrounds, we have to know where playgrounds are and where playgrounds are not. That sounds like a mapping question. Interesting. So where things get really, really complicated though, is that there are 3 huge, huge challenges that we face at Kaboom. The first is there was no national playground database of all playground locations in the United States. Some local communities have them, some governments have them, sometimes they're open data, sometimes they're not, sometimes that data is really, really old, like 10 or 12 years old. There is no national database of those playground locations. And even if it did exist, there are always challenges. And the first challenge is, I'm going to show you an example from a location in Baltimore. And so this map is circled. What you can see here is what's called the footprint or the border of the playground, right? And so inside that border you have mulch, and that is where the playground is supposed to be. And if you look at the street view, and I highlighted here the street view of 2019, there's a playground there, right? It's not the greatest playground, it's kind of old, but there is a playground there. And you can even see to the left-hand side of the screen, sorry, the right-hand side of the screen, there's like this X and O tic-tac-toe kind of play panel is what we call it. Got it? Playground here in June 2019. Street view in 2024. Where'd the playground go? The panel is still there, but the infrastructure, the play structure itself is gone, right? This happens way, way more than you think, and it can happen pretty quickly based on which views you have and which data and mapping software you're utilizing. So all of this is Google Earth imagery. Google Earth imagery, October 2022, there's a play structure there. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see it. 2023, it's not there anymore, okay? What's really fascinating is that in Google and a couple of other places, it is marked as a playground still today. So there's this quality issue that is always changing, always evolving, that we at Kaboom have no way to solve for. And we have no idea what the quality of those playgrounds are. Because even if local communities have databases and locations of where the playgrounds are, no one is tracking to any real extent the quality of those places, and they're not updating quality data on any sort of realistic timeline, right? This is a different playground in Baltimore, but when you look at it, no one is going to play on this. You wouldn't let your kids play on this playground, right? It, for all intents and purposes, should not even exist on a map or in a database of playground locations, but it does. Okay, we don't know where they are. Even if we did, the situation's constantly evolving and we can't keep up. No one tracks quality. That's a big problem for Kaboom. Okay, so how do we solve for it? We created this thing called the Place-Based Inequity Prioritization Index, which is a lot to say every single time, but the acronym is PIPI. We call it PIPI. Okay, so you're going to hear me talk about PIPI for the rest of this presentation. So PIPI is a combination of 21 publicly available data points for every census tract in the United States. We do some math. I'm happy to geek out on the map later. It is a standardized z-score, if that means anything to anyone. And then we use this to estimate where place-based inequity is occurring or likely to be occurring throughout the United States. You heard Lee talk earlier this morning about how there's always limitations to our map, and sometimes we have to make estimates and make guesses. That's what PIPI is. PIPI is a guess of the need for additional playgrounds in the United States. It is based on these 22 things, and I know it's a lot. There's a lot on the slide. I'm happy to send it to you. But I want to show you all of the things that make up PIPI, and they're weighted differently. It's everything from how many children of color live in a community, to life expectancy as birth as a proxy for health conditions, to what the traffic and pedestrian infrastructure is in these communities, because it's not just about, well, does a playground exist there or not, but can people get to it? Can they access it? That's also important in the PIPI calculation. Okay. Like I said, PIPI gives us a number, a single score. That score goes from a -7 to a +7. It's a standard deviation. It can be positive or negative. Negative score means that community is good. It doesn't need Kaboom. It has a good infrastructure. It has good underlying demographic information. But if it's a score that is positive, above 0, and the greater the number, the more need there is, and that's where PIPI prioritizes our work. So negative PIPI score, good equity, there's a good infrastructure. Positive PIPI score, they need some help. And now let me look at some maps. Because if we have numbers and we associate those to census tracts, it is really easy to map stuff. So look, I mapped Cambridge, Massachusetts. So darker scores equal higher PIPI scores or a predictor of greater need for place-based infrastructure. And so you can look at this map, and even if you're not familiar with Cambridge, you can, and the surrounding area, you can pick out where we might need to build new playgrounds. Odessa and Midland, Texas. So maybe or maybe not. You're familiar with the show or the book Friday Night Lights. This is an area in Texas that is a combination of heavily rural, but a lot of gas money, a lot of oil money. And you can make distinctions between what the need is there based on these maps. Prince George's County, which is where I live, which is one of the suburbs in Maryland, it's a giant county, and we can zoom in and look at PIPI maps to look at the need in this county as well. So the really cool thing is, and this is another part of Prince George's County, is even if we at Kaboom or any of you have never been to one of these locations, we can build a PIPI map and we can have an intelligent discussion about where we think the need for more place-based infrastructure, more playgrounds is, right? So you may have no idea what this community looks like in Prince George's County, but you can look at this map and you could tell me, I think we need a new playground in this darker shaded area, right, to the upper left-hand side. Well, your left, my right. Make sense? And we can also then map playground locations. So in partnership with the Parks and Recreation Department, we have verified playground locations that we can put on top of a PIPI map, and now we can have a conversation about what are the quality of these locations. A lot of these that are in yellow on the map are very low quality, they need to be replaced, but it's not just about do we replace all of them, because many local government entities don't have the resources for that, or they need to prioritize them depending on budget years, is how do we prioritize based on PIPI data and other data to help us have these conversations. So this census tract that I've highlighted has a negative PIPI score. And this one also has a negative PIPI score, but the second one that I highlighted has a lot of playgrounds in it. But realistically, we're not going to prioritize these locations. We're going to prioritize locations up here, that census tract that has a PIPI score of 3, one of the highest in the United States, and it has 2 playgrounds that are right next to that PIPI tract. And or do we prioritize this PIPI tract, this census tract that has also a pretty high PIPI score, but there's two playgrounds that need repair and restoration within that census tract, okay? We now, at Kaboom, using this data, PIPI, and the mapping stuff that we can do, can have far, far different conversations than we were able to have 4 or 5 years ago, where basically the default has always been who gets the new playground. It's the communities with the loudest voice. Who has the loudest voices? The white, wealthy individuals that have time to advocate in front of city council or state governments or local government agencies. This data allows us to push back on that and say, like, well, these voices are telling you one thing, but here's what the data and the maps are showing you about how we should prioritize new playgrounds. Now, we're not stopping at PIPI. There's a whole bunch of work that has to go after this. And so Maggie and I have put together some proposals, and we're going to need some help from all of you all in the mapping community with this. And the first ask of you all is map playgrounds for us. Even if you can just map locations of playgrounds and build the accuracy of that data set, please do. Because oftentimes we come across data on playground locations that's 10, 12 years old, and it doesn't do us any good. Secondly, we're trying to find a funding partner to build a national database of playground locations, because we have OpenStreetMap data, we have Google data, we have data from all of the different mapping partners that you see represented today, plus Kaboom has our own data from about 25 years worth of work, and we work with the 10 largest playground manufacturers in the United States. We combine all of that data, we think we can get to about 95% accuracy of the playground locations. And as we continue to go forward, we also would love your help thinking about how we measure playground quality. Is it a 5-star kind of rating that you do like on Yelp? Or can we give people a much more sophisticated tool where you're rating, does this piece of playground infrastructure have a surface that is still usable? Is it ADA compliant? How much can we ask of citizen mappers and individuals who do not have playground knowledge and expertise to give us information on playground locations? We need help with that. So I'm available to answer any questions. If you want any PIPI data, we have it available at the census tract level and can email it to you at the state level if you want to use it in your own projects. Email me, get in contact with you. I will happy to mail it to you directly. Happy to take any questions about PIPI or the other work that we do at Kaboom. Yeah, very good question. So the question was, how do we come up with the weights and the underlying measures and how we tweak that over time? So I don't know if you noticed when I put up what goes into the slide, it said version 2. Version 1 started 2 years ago in 2023, and one of the things that we did over the past 2 years is think about, do we have the right underlying indicators? Are we missing anything? Do we need to tweak the weights? And that was based on our experience talking with researchers, not only within the mapping community, but also in the play and recreation community. And I'll give you an example of one of the things that we tweaked. One of the original measures in the original PIPI was neighborhood access to Wi-Fi and to internet-capable kind of computers and laptops, right? Which is great, and it was a good proxy of income in 2023, but so many people are accessing the internet now through their phones and not like a standard desktop computer, right? So that makes sense to come out. But we put in something that a lot of people have been asking about, which is, what about child health conditions and children's health? And should you be prioritizing communities where there are lower or poorer child health outcomes? Absolutely. Unfortunately, the United States does a really horrible job tracking data on kids generally, but particularly on child health. So we had to find something that was a proxy of child health conditions, and the best we could find was children who are uninsured or have health insurance. So we took out access to computers and internet at home on a laptop. We put in children who do not have health insurance, right? And so then we tweak some of the weights as well to try to get it as best as we can based on our own experience using the tool over the past couple of years. It's a really good question. There will be a PIPI 3.0 probably in 2027. Okay.